Alex took a deep breath as the shuttle doors slid open with a soft hiss. The metallic scent of recycled air mixed with the faint aroma of alien flora, making his nose twitch. He stepped off the shuttle ramp and into the grand hall of the Galactic Academy, a place where the brightest minds of the galaxy trained to become future leaders and warriors. The hall stretched out endlessly, its ceiling glowing with artificial starlight. Holographic banners of the Academy's crest floated in the air, shimmering as alien students passed beneath them. Alex's eyes scanned the crowd, taking in the wide variety of species. Some were tall and thin with translucent skin, others were squat and covered in thick scales. Tentacles, wings, and even extra limbs were common sights. And yet, despite their differences, they all had one thing in common. They all stared at Alex with barely concealed curiosity and distrust. Alex adjusted the strap on his shoulder, where his pet sat curled in a secure harness. A low growl rumbled from the small creature tucked against his chest. Alex placed a calming hand on its head. "Easy, Ghost. We're not here to start trouble." The growl quieted, but Ghost's sharp golden eyes stayed alert. His black fur bristled as a tall, armored figure approached. "Human." The figure's voice was low and cold. The alien's skin was dark blue, almost black, and shimmered faintly under the artificial lights. His elongated head had a ridge of sharp spines that ran down the back of his neck. His deep-set silver eyes glinted with disdain as he looked down at Alex. "I am Vexer, representative of the Voran Dominion." Alex smiled tightly. "Alex, from Earth." Vexer's gaze shifted to the bundle on Alex's chest. "And what exactly is that?" Alex's smile widened. This is Ghost." Vexer's lip curled. "We were informed that each student would bring a creature native to their homeworld as a display of cultural diversity. Yet you bring this primitive predator." Alex's hand tightened around Ghost. "Ghost isn't just any predator. He's highly trained, enhanced senses, increased strength, genetically adapted to harsh environments." "Ah," Vexer said mockingly, "a dangerous pet for a dangerous race." His silver eyes narrowed. "Don't let it get loose. If it causes trouble, the Academy will hold you responsible." "Noted," Alex said evenly. A loud chime echoed through the hall, and the attending students started filing toward the presentation chamber. Vexer gave Alex one last disdainful glance before turning and walking away. Alex sighed and followed the crowd, his hand resting on Ghost's head. Ghost's low rumbling growl vibrated against Alex's chest. "Yeah, I know," Alex whispered. "He's a jerk." The presentation chamber was massive, shaped like an arena with tiered seating that spiraled up toward a domed ceiling. At the center of the chamber was a raised platform, where each student would present their pet. Alien students were already seated, many accompanied by their strange and exotic creatures. Alex spotted a massive furred beast with 3 sets of eyes and long, tusk-like fangs. Another student had a glassy, jellyfish-like creature floating in the air, its tendrils pulsing with bioluminescent light. A reptilian student had a sleek, 6-legged creature that flicked out a long tongue, tasting the air. Alex slid into his seat and unhooked Ghost's harness. Ghost jumped down, landing lightly on the ground. His golden eyes scanned the room. His black fur blended into the shadows beneath the seat. His ears twitched. He was on alert. The headmaster, a tall insectoid creature with glittering chitin and compound eyes, stepped to the center of the platform. His voice clicked and buzzed through the translator system. "Welcome, new students of the Galactic Academy. Today marks the beginning of your journey toward understanding and cooperation. As a symbol of this unity, each student will present a creature from their homeworld, a display of trust and partnership between species. One by one, the students were called to the platform. A silver-skinned being presented a swirling mass of plasma-like energy. The creature hissed and pulsed in midair before forming a protective ring around its owner. The crowd murmured in approval. A tall bird-like student showed off a feathered serpent that curled around his shoulders and emitted a harmonic song that made the air vibrate. "Vexor of the Vorin Dominion," the headmaster announced. Vexor stood and strode confidently to the platform. He extended his arm, and a sleek, armored creature slithered from beneath his cloak. It had dark metallic scales and gleaming red eyes. It coiled around Vexor's arm and hissed, exposing needle-like fangs. "This is a Vorin shade serpent," Vexor said with a thin smile. "Engineered for assassination and infiltration. It can slip through security systems and dissolve organic material with its venom." The serpent extended its tongue and tasted the air. A hush fell over the crowd as the serpent's gaze fixed on Ghost beneath Alex's chair. Ghost's golden eyes narrowed. A low growl built in his chest. Vexor smiled darkly. "Not all creatures are built equally." "Alex of Earth," the headmaster called. Alex rose, feeling the weight of 100 alien eyes on him. Ghost padded silently at his side as they walked to the platform. Ghost's claws clicked softly against the smooth floor. Alex knelt beside Ghost and scratched behind his ear. "This is Ghost," Alex said simply. "Genetically enhanced Earth Wolf. Heightened senses, strategic intelligence, and," Alex smiled, "loyalty." Ghost's ears twitched. His gaze swept the crowd, his head slightly lowered. His muscles were tense. Vexor's serpent hissed, coiling tighter around his arm. Ghost's eyes flicked toward the serpent, and his hackles rose. Vexor's smile widened. "Curious, will your beast fight mine, human?" Alex's smile vanished. "Ghost isn't a weapon." Vexor's eyes gleamed. "Pity." Suddenly, Ghost's head snapped toward the far wall of the chamber. His lips curled back, revealing sharp white fangs. He growled low and dangerous. Alex frowned. "Ghost?" A strange, metallic sound echoed through the air, like a vibrating hum beneath the floor. Ghost's fur bristled. He crouched low, growling louder. His gaze locked on a shadowed corner of the chamber. The headmaster's gaze sharpened. "Security." The lights in the chamber flickered and dimmed. A sharp, mechanical sound followed. Ghost's growl turned into a snarl. His golden eyes flashed. Alex's breath quickened. His instincts screamed that something was wrong. "Ghost," Alex whispered. Ghost lunged toward the darkened corner. His claws scraped against the floor. A shimmer in the air. Something moved. The cloaking field distorted. Ghost leaped forward. An alien figure materialized from the shadows, sleek, armored, and holding a plasma knife. Its silver eyes flashed as it lunged toward the headmaster. Ghost slammed into the figure with a deep, feral snarl. The alien crashed to the ground, its knife spinning from its hand. Ghost's jaws clamped around the figure's arm. The alien screamed. Chaos erupted. The crowd gasped. Security drones descended. Ghost dragged the alien down, fangs tearing into metal armor. Sparks erupted. Alex sprinted toward Ghost. "Ghost, let go." Ghost released the alien, growling, as security drones surrounded the intruder. The alien shimmered and vanished as the cloaking field reactivated. The headmaster stepped forward, his compound eyes glinting. "What was that?" the headmaster said slowly. Ghost's golden eyes glowed. His ears flattened. He growled low and deep. Alex stood beside Ghost. "I don't know." Vexor's serpent hissed, its red eyes wide with fear. Vexor's gaze met Alex's. For the first time, there was no disdain in his expression, only unease. Ghost's eyes remained locked on the darkened corner of the chamber. His growl didn't stop. Ghost's growl didn't stop. His golden eyes remained fixed on the shadowed corner of the chamber where the intruder had vanished. The headmaster's compound eyes flicked toward the security drones that hovered in the air, their red scanning lights sweeping the area for signs of the infiltrator. The crowd murmured anxiously, shifting in their seats. Alien students glanced at one another, some whispering in low, nervous tones. Alex crouched beside Ghost, resting a hand on the thick fur of his back. Ghost's muscles were tense beneath his hand, vibrating with suppressed energy. Alex rubbed his neck gently. "Easy, boy. It's over." Ghost's ears twitched. He let out a low, rumbling sound but didn't relax. His eyes stayed fixed on the spot where the cloaked figure had disappeared. Alex's gaze followed Ghost's line of sight, but there was nothing there now, just the cold, polished floor of the chamber. The headmaster's gaze narrowed. "Security," he said in a sharp, buzzing tone. "Seal the chamber. No one leaves until we understand what happened here." A metallic hum echoed through the air as the chamber's high, curved doors slid shut with a heavy thud. The security drones hovered in place, their sensors sweeping the room in tight, organized patterns. Ghost's growling quieted, but his fur remained bristled. Alex could feel the tension in him like a live wire beneath his hand. Vexor stepped toward the platform, his dark eyes flashing with suspicion. His shade serpent coiled around his arm, its metallic scales gleaming faintly under the low lights. What was that? Vexor's tone was sharp and accusing. The headmaster's gaze shifted toward Alex. "That's what we must determine." Alex stood slowly, his hand never leaving Ghost's fur. That wasn't just an intruder. That was a coordinated strike. "Ridiculous," Vexor scoffed. "The Academy is under the protection of the Voran Dominion. No one could penetrate these walls without being detected." Alex's eyes narrowed. And yet someone did. Vexor's serpent hissed and tightened around his arm. Vexor's eyes flashed coldly. Perhaps the humans, Pet, was involved. It attacked the intruder without hesitation. Alex's jaw tightened. Ghost acted on instinct. He saved the headmaster's life. Or, Vexor said darkly, he was covering for something. Ghost's growl deepened. His golden eyes gleamed in the low light as he stared at Vexor. His lips curled back, exposing sharp white teeth. Alex's hand tightened on Ghost's back. "You're out of line," Alex said coldly. Vexor smiled thinly. "Am I?" "Enough." The headmaster's voice cut through the tension like a blade. His gaze swept over the students. "We are not here to cast blame without proof. The security team will investigate." His gaze turned toward Alex. "Until then, your pet remains under close observation." Alex's hand tensed. Ghost didn't do anything wrong. "Perhaps not," the headmaster said evenly. "But his actions raise questions." Alex's jaw tightened, but he gave a small nod. "Understood." Ghost's golden eyes stayed fixed on Vexor. Vexor smiled faintly, a predatory glint in his silver eyes. The headmaster turned toward the assembled students. "For now, return to your quarters. Classes are suspended until further notice." The chamber began to empty. Students filed out, whispering among themselves. Ghost stayed close to Alex's side as they moved through the corridor toward the residential wing. The polished metal walls reflected faint streaks of light as they passed. Ghost's claws clicked softly against the floor. Alex's thoughts churned. That intruder hadn't been some random attacker. Their cloaking tech had been advanced, more advanced than anything Alex had ever seen. Ghost had sensed them before anyone else. That wasn't normal. Ghost's ears twitched. His head lifted. He sniffed the air and let out a low growl. Alex frowned. "What is it?" Ghost's head turned toward a side corridor. His growl deepened. Alex followed his gaze. The corridor was dark and quiet, lined with sealed doors. Ghost's golden eyes gleamed as he stepped forward, his muscles tense beneath his fur. "Ghost," Alex whispered. Ghost's growl sharpened, his gaze fixed on the far end of the corridor. Then Alex saw it, a faint shimmer in the air, like heat distortion. It flickered for a moment, then vanished. Ghost's lips curled back. He crouched low, ready to spring. "Ghost, stay." The shimmer moved. Fast. Ghost lunged. A blur of motion. Ghost's claws scraped against metal. A metallic hiss. Something slammed into Ghost, knocking him sideways. Ghost yelped but rolled to his feet instantly. His fangs flashed as he leaped again. Alex's heart hammered. He sprinted forward, drawing his sidearm from his belt. The shimmering figure twisted and darted toward the nearest wall. Ghost leaped, jaws snapping shut. He caught something. The shimmer fractured as Ghost's fangs sank into it. Sparks erupted. The figure screamed, a strange, mechanical sound, before twisting violently. Ghost was thrown backward, skidding across the floor. "Ghost!" Alex shouted. Ghost rolled onto his feet, growling. His eyes blazed with golden light. The figure's cloaking field collapsed. An alien stood there, tall and armored in segmented black plating. Its silver eyes flashed coldly as it raised a long, thin weapon that pulsed with blue light. Alex's instincts took over. He raised his sidearm and fired. The shot hit the alien in the shoulder. It snarled and stumbled back, smoke rising from its armor. Ghost leaped again, slamming into the alien's chest. His jaws locked around its arm. The alien screamed and struck Ghost hard across the head. Ghost's body hit the floor with a sickening thud. "No!" Alex shouted. He fired again. The alien spun and twisted, impossibly fast. It shot toward the nearest wall. The cloaking field flickered, and then it was gone. Alex ran to Ghost's side. Ghost's eyes were half closed, his breathing shallow. Blood matted the fur on his head. Alex knelt, his hands shaking. "Ghost, Ghost, stay with me," Alex whispered. Ghost's golden eyes flicked open. His breathing quickened. His head lifted slightly, his gaze locking on Alex. Footsteps echoed down the corridor. Vexor appeared, his serpent coiled around his arm. His silver eyes narrowed as he surveyed the scene. "What happened here?" Alex glared at him. "We were attacked." Vexor's eyes darkened. "By what?" Alex's hand tightened on Ghost's fur, something that shouldn't have been here. Vexor's gaze lingered on Ghost. "Interesting. Save it," Alex growled. He lifted Ghost into his arms. Ghost's body was limp, his breath shallow. Alex's jaw tightened as he stood. "You're lucky it didn't kill you," Vexor said coolly. Alex's eyes flashed with cold anger. "It didn't kill me because Ghost stopped it." Vexor smiled faintly. "Perhaps your pet is more dangerous than you realize." Alex's grip on Ghost tightened. "Or maybe we're just better than you think." He turned and strode down the corridor toward the med bay, Ghost cradled in his arms. Ghost's golden eyes flickered open briefly, his gaze meeting Alex. "You did good," Alex whispered. "Rest now." Ghost's eyes closed. His breathing steadied. Alex's gaze hardened. Whoever had sent that assassin, whatever they were after, they had made a mistake. They had underestimated the human, and they had underestimated Ghost. Ghost lay on the examination table in the Academy's med bay, his golden eyes half closed. A thin line of blood stained the white fur beneath his ear, but his chest rose and fell in steady breaths. The soft hum of the medical scanner hovered in the air as the AudioBook's mechanical arms moved over Ghost's body, repairing the internal damage from the attack. Alex sat beside him, his hand resting on Ghost's thick fur. His other hand was clenched into a tight fist on his knee. He could still feel the adrenaline pumping through his veins. The sharp image of the cloaked figure disappearing into thin air burned into his mind. Ghost had saved him. Again. A soft beep from the medical scanner made Alex's gaze sharpen. The AudioBook's thin metallic arm retracted as the scanner completed its work. Ghost's breathing deepened. His eyes fluttered open for a brief second before closing again. "He's stable." The medbot's voice was calm and sterile. "Minor cranial trauma. Soft tissue damage. Accelerated healing initiated." Alex let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. His hand tightened on Ghost's fur. "Thanks." The medbot floated away, leaving Alex alone with Ghost. Footsteps echoed in the hallway beyond the glass wall of the med bay. Alex's eyes narrowed as Vexor appeared on the other side. His shade serpent slithered around his arm, its metallic scales gleaming in the artificial light. Vexor's silver eyes glinted coldly as he stepped into the room. Alex didn't bother standing. His eyes remained fixed on Vexor as the alien approached. "Impressive," Vexor said smoothly. His gaze lingered on Ghost. "Your pet survived a direct attack from an assassin-class infiltration unit." Alex's jaw tightened. "Yeah, impressive." Vexor's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Curious how the assassin targeted you, and even more curious how your creature sensed it before any of our security measures detected the threat." Alex's eyes narrowed. "Ghost's instincts are better than any tech you've got." "Indeed." Vexor's gaze sharpened. "That makes him dangerous." Alex stood slowly. Ghost's ears twitched. His golden eyes flicked open just enough to watch Vexor. Vexor's serpent hissed. "Our security feeds show the intruder targeting you specifically. Why?" Alex's gaze hardened. "Maybe you should tell me." Vexor's smile sharpened. "If you're implying this was a Dominion plot—" "I'm not implying anything," Alex interrupted. "But I know what I saw." "And what exactly did you see?" Alex's hand curled into a fist. "Advanced tech. Cloaking fields. The kind of gear you don't just find lying around." Vexor's gaze darkened. "You think someone on the inside helped them?" Alex's eyes didn't waver. "I think someone with the resources to bypass your security protocols either wanted me dead or wanted Ghost." Vexor's serpent hissed again. Its cold, metallic tongue flicked toward Ghost. Ghost's growl vibrated through the floor. "Careful," Alex said softly. "He bites." Vexor's gaze lingered on Ghost for a long moment before turning toward Alex. "The headmaster will expect a full report. You'll need to explain why your pet was able to detect a threat that none of our systems picked up." Alex's jaw tightened. "And if I don't have an explanation?" Vexor smiled faintly. "Then you might want to reconsider bringing a Deathworld creature into an academic environment." Alex's eyes flashed coldly. "Ghost saved your headmaster's life and raised more questions than answers," Vexor said. "Be careful, human. Attention is not always a good thing." He turned and strode toward the exit. The door slid open with a soft hiss. Alex's hand remained on Ghost's fur as Vexor disappeared down the corridor. Ghost's golden eyes followed him until the door closed. Alex leaned back, his mind racing. The assassin hadn't been after the headmaster. That much was obvious now. The intruder had targeted him, or Ghost. Ghost stirred. His head lifted slowly. His golden eyes sharpened as they met Alex. "Hey, easy," Alex said quietly, scratching behind Ghost's ear. "You're okay." Ghost blinked slowly. His breathing steadied. He pressed his head against Alex's hand. Alex's gaze hardened. "We need to figure out who's behind this." Ghost's ears twitched. His gaze shifted toward the corner of the room. Alex followed his eyes. There was nothing there, but Ghost's muscles tensed beneath Alex's hand. Someone was watching them. Alex stood, his hand brushing the sidearm strapped to his leg. He walked toward the door and opened it. The corridor beyond was empty. The metallic walls reflected the cold overhead lights. But the feeling remained, the sense of being observed. Alex's eyes narrowed. He stepped into the corridor, Ghost padding silently beside him. The metallic floor hummed faintly beneath their feet. Ghost's golden eyes flicked toward the ceiling. His ears twitched. Alex's hand rested on his sidearm as he walked toward the main hall. The students were gone now. The security drones hovered in the air, their red lights sweeping the corridor. "Where do we even start?" Alex muttered. Ghost let out a low chuff. His ears perked toward the far end of the corridor. Alex followed his gaze. At the very edge of the hallway, a faint shimmer appeared. Ghost growled. Alex's pulse quickened. He reached for his sidearm. The shimmer deepened, then flickered out. Ghost lunged forward. Ghost. The shimmer exploded into motion. A dark figure darted down the hall, moving impossibly fast. Ghost shot after it, claws scraping against the metal floor. Alex ran after him, drawing his sidearm as he sprinted toward the far end of the hall. The figure twisted and vanished through a side door. Ghost followed, his growl echoing down the corridor. Alex skidded to a stop as he reached the door. He slammed his hand against the control panel. The door slid open. The room beyond was empty. A maintenance bay, dark and cold. The faint scent of oil lingered in the air. Ghost stood in the center of the room, his ears pinned back. His growl rumbled through the floor. Alex scanned the room, sidearm raised. "Who's there?" No answer. Ghost's growl deepened. He stepped toward the far wall, his gaze fixed on a dark corner beneath the maintenance scaffolding. Alex's eyes narrowed. He approached slowly. He knelt down and swept his hand along the edge of the wall. His fingers brushed against something cold, a thin metallic disc. Alex lifted it carefully. It was no larger than his palm, dark gray with a thin line of glowing red along the edge. Ghost sniffed at it, his eyes narrowed. "A tracker?" Alex whispered. Ghost growled. Alex's jaw tightened. He slipped the device into his pocket. Footsteps echoed in the corridor behind them. Alex's eyes sharpened. Ghost's growl cut off. Vexor appeared at the entrance. His gaze flicked toward the device in Alex's hand. "Trouble?" Vexor asked smoothly. Alex's eyes narrowed. "Not anymore." Vexor's smile sharpened. "You're being hunted." Alex's grip tightened on the device. "Yeah, I noticed." Vexor's silver eyes gleamed. "And why would someone go to such trouble to track a human?" Alex's gaze sharpened. "Maybe they weren't tracking me." Vexor's smile faded. Alex's gaze shifted toward Ghost. His golden eyes gleamed in the dark. They were tracking him. The Academy's warning sirens blared through the hallways, a shrill and constant wail that made Alex's heart hammer in his chest. Red lights pulsed along the corridor walls, casting a harsh glow that reflected off the cold metal floors. The sound of running footsteps and shouting voices filled the air as security teams scrambled into action. Ghost's ears flattened against his skull as he padded at Alex's side, his golden eyes flicking back and forth with sharp precision. His muscles were coiled tight beneath his fur, ready to spring into action at a moment's notice. Alex's hand tightened around the sidearm at his hip as he jogged down the corridor. He could feel the tension in the air like static electricity. Something was coming, something big. A burst of static crackled in his earpiece, followed by a strained voice. "Perimeter breach in Sector 5. We have confirmed enemy units on the grounds." "Repeat, enemy units on the grounds." Alex's pulse quickened. Ghost growled low in his throat. A figure rounded the corner ahead. Commander Vexor. His shade serpent was coiled tightly around his arm, its metallic scales rippling with an oily sheen. Vexor's silver eyes were sharp as knives. "Human," Vexor barked. "Come with me." Alex didn't hesitate. He fell into step beside Vexor as they moved toward the security control room. The floor hummed beneath their feet as the Academy's automated defense systems activated. Metal barriers slid down over the windows and doors, locking the facility down. "How many?" Alex asked. "Too many," Vexor replied, his gaze dark. "They've breached the outer defenses. Heavy weaponry. Cloaking fields." Alex's jaw tightened. Same tech as the assassin. Vexor's gaze narrowed. "No doubt." Ghost's ears twitched. He growled, his eyes fixed on the corridor ahead. They rounded another corner, entering the security control room. The large glass window overlooked the Academy courtyard below. The view made Alex's breath catch. Dark figures in sleek black armor were pouring through the Academy's outer gates. Energy weapons flared as security drones engaged the intruders, but the enemy was too fast. They moved with terrifying precision, cloaking fields flickering as they shifted through the shadows. Explosions rocked the ground below. Bright green energy blasts slammed into the Academy walls, sending debris and sparks flying into the air. Defense grid is failing. A security officer shouted. We have to fall back. No, Vexor said coldly. Hold the line. Alex's gaze swept the battlefield. His stomach tightened. The enemy wasn't just here to attack the academy. They were targeting something specific. They're headed for the research wing, Alex said. Vexor's gaze sharpened. How do you know? Alex's eyes narrowed. Because that's where Ghost was scanned after the attack. They want him. Vexor's lips curled. Then we make sure they don't get him. A tremor shuddered through the floor. Ghost growled, his hackles rising. His eyes flared with golden light. They're inside, Alex said. The security officer at the console cursed. How did they get past the internal shields? They didn't, Alex muttered. They were already here. The far wall exploded inward. Alex threw himself to the ground as debris and shrapnel blasted through the air. Ghost leaped over him, snarling. Black armored figures stormed through the breach. Energy rifles raised. Engage, Vexor shouted. Security guards opened fire. Bright red energy beams crisscrossed the room. Alex rolled to the side, drawing his sidearm. He fired twice. The first shot clipped an enemy's shoulder. The second slammed into another's chest, knocking them back. Ghost launched forward, teeth flashing. He hit the nearest enemy and tore into their armor with brutal efficiency. The black-clad soldiers screamed as Ghost's powerful jaws crushed their arm. Alex rose to his feet, heart hammering. Another enemy raised their weapon. Alex shot them in the throat. They crumpled to the ground. Ghost spun toward the next target. His fur bristled with static electricity as he lunged, his claws scraping against armored plating. He tore the helmet off one enemy, revealing a pale, gray-skinned face beneath. The alien's eyes widened in terror just before Ghost's jaws snapped shut on his throat. Alex fired again and again. His shots were quick and precise, dropping two more enemies as they surged through the breach. Ghost's golden eyes flared as he leaped at another soldier, knocking them to the ground. Hold the line, Vexor roared. His shaved serpent lashed out, its metallic body extending like a whip. It wrapped around the throat of an enemy soldier and yanked them off their feet. More enemies poured through the breach. We're outnumbered, the security officer shouted. Alex's mind raced. He glanced toward Ghost, who was panting hard, blood smeared across his white fur. Ghost's golden eyes locked with his. We have to cut them off, Alex said. Vexor's gaze narrowed. How? Alex's eyes swept the room, his gaze fixed on the exposed power conduit along the ceiling. There, he said. If we overload the conduit, we can collapse the corridor. Vexor's eyes glinted. Risky. Alex raised his sidearm. Got a better idea. Vexor smiled faintly. Do it. Alex raised his weapon and fired. The energy blast struck the conduit. Sparks exploded as the metal casing buckled. The hum of energy built into a deafening roar. Fall back, Vexor shouted. Alex grabbed Ghost's collar and yanked him toward the exit. Vexor followed, his shade serpent lashing at the enemies as they retreated. Behind them, the conduit detonated with a blinding flash. A wave of heat and pressure knocked Alex off his feet. He hit the ground hard, the air driven from his lungs. Ghost's body pressed against his side, shielding him from the blast. When the dust settled, Alex forced himself to sit up. The corridor was filled with twisted metal and debris. The breach was sealed. Ghost lifted his head, blood dripping from his fangs. He licked Alex's face once, then sat back on his haunches, ears pricked. Alex coughed and pushed himself to his feet. His legs were shaky, but he steadied himself with a hand on Ghost's back. Vexor stood nearby, his expression grim. That was reckless. Alex wiped the blood from his mouth. Yeah, but it worked. Vexor's eyes narrowed. This isn't over. They'll try again. Alex's gaze darkened. Then we'll be ready. Ghost growled low in his throat. His golden eyes flared. Alex's hand tightened on his sidearm. His gaze swept the wreckage, heart still racing. Whatever this was, it was bigger than just a random attack. Someone had targeted Ghost. Someone knew exactly what they were after. And whoever it was, they weren't finished yet. Alex stood in the dimly lit hallway, his breath coming in short gasps. His uniform was torn, smeared with dust and blood. Ghost stood beside him, his white fur streaked with crimson. His golden eyes were sharp and alert, ears twitching at the slightest noise. "Report." Vexor's cold voice came through the comm. "We sealed the breach," Alex replied. "But they're not done. They'll regroup and hit us again." Ghost's growl rumbled low and deep. Alex's hand slid down to rest on his thick fur. Ghost was tense, his muscles coiled like a spring. He was ready to fight. "Stay there," Vexor ordered. "Reinforcements are inbound." Alex's jaw tightened. "They're coming for Ghost. We need to stop them now." "Human," Vexor's tone sharpened. "Stand down." Alex's hand curled into a fist. "No." A sudden tremor rocked the hallway. Dust and debris fell from the ceiling. Ghost tensed, his fur bristling. "They're coming," Alex said quietly. Down the corridor, the lights flickered. A deep mechanical hum vibrated through the walls. At the far end of the hallway, the shadows darkened unnaturally. Alex lifted his sidearm. His heart thudded painfully in his chest. From the darkness, figures emerged. Tall, black-armored enemies with glowing red visors. Their rifles hummed with deadly energy as they advanced silently. Ghost's lips curled back in a snarl. His golden eyes flashed dangerously. Alex steadied his breathing. He raised his sidearm and fired. The shot hit the lead soldier in the chest. The armor sparked, and the enemy stumbled, but it didn't go down. It raised its weapon. Ghost launched forward in a blur of white fur. His jaws snapped down on the soldier's arm. The enemy screamed as Ghost's powerful bite crushed through the armor. Ghost twisted, yanking the soldier off his feet. Alex fired again, hitting another enemy in the knee. The soldier dropped, and Alex shot him in the visor. The red glow flickered and went out. More enemies rushed forward. Ghost leaped toward the nearest one, his claws tearing through metal plating. The enemy screamed as Ghost's fangs sank into his throat. Alex ducked behind a support beam as a burst of energy fire sliced through the air. He fired back, taking down another soldier. Ghost spun and lunged at the next target, slamming into the soldier's chest. They hit the floor hard. Ghost's jaws closed over the soldier's helmet and crushed it with a sickening crunch. The hallway filled with smoke and sparks. The sounds of gunfire and snarling echoed off the metal walls. Alex's hands were shaking from adrenaline, but he kept firing. Suddenly, a sharp, high-pitched hum filled the air. Ghost's ears flattened, and he stumbled back, whining. Alex's gaze darted toward the far end of the hallway. A tall figure stepped out of the darkness. Its black armor was sleek and smooth, its red visor glowing like a slit of fire. It carried a long, crackling energy spear in one hand. Alex's stomach tightened. This was no ordinary soldier. The figure raised its spear, and the air vibrated with lethal energy. "Ghost!" Alex shouted. Ghost lunged. The figure moved impossibly fast. It sidestepped Ghost's attack and swung the spear in a brutal arc. The weapon connected with Ghost's side, and a burst of electric light flared. Ghost let out a pained yelp as his body was thrown backward. He hit the ground hard, his legs twitching. His golden eyes dulled as smoke curled from his fur. "No!" Alex screamed. He ran toward Ghost, sliding to his knees beside him. Ghost's body trembled, his breathing ragged. Alex's hand pressed against Ghost's side. His fur was burned. Alex could feel his racing heartbeat beneath his palm. "Come on, buddy," Alex whispered. "Stay with me." The figure strode toward them, spear raised. Alex's head snapped up, his teeth clenched. "You bastard," Alex growled. He stood and raised his sidearm. His hand was steady despite the rage burning through him. The figure lunged forward. Alex fired. The shot hit the enemy's shoulder, but the figure didn't even slow down. It swung the spear toward Alex's head. Alex ducked and rolled, coming up behind the figure. He fired into its back. The armor sparked, but didn't break. The figure spun, faster than Alex could react. The spear came down. Ghost lunged from the ground. Despite his injuries, Ghost's powerful body collided with the enemy, knocking it back. His fangs locked onto the figure's arm, tearing at the armor. The figure roared, slamming Ghost into the wall. Ghost yelped but didn't let go. "Ghost!" Alex shouted. Ghost's eyes flashed gold. His body vibrated with a strange, pulsing light. The figure raised the spear, aiming for Ghost's exposed side. Alex's eyes widened. He moved without thinking. He threw himself between the spear and Ghost. The spear drove into Alex's side. The burst of searing pain exploded through his body. He gasped, his legs buckling beneath him. Ghost's eyes widened. His growl deepened into a furious roar. Alex felt himself falling, the world spinning around him. But before he hit the ground, Ghost's golden light flared. A shockwave burst outward from Ghost's body. The walls shuddered, the lights exploding in a rain of sparks. The figure stumbled back, its armor cracking under the pressure. Ghost surged forward, his eyes blazing with golden fire. He hit the enemy with bone-shattering force. The figure screamed as Ghost's jaws tore through its throat. It collapsed, twitching. Ghost stood over the fallen body, his chest heaving. His golden eyes glowed fiercely in the dim light. Alex lay on the ground, his breath hitching. Pain radiated through his body. He felt blood seeping through his uniform. Ghost limped toward him, his massive body trembling. He collapsed beside Alex, pressing his nose to Alex's cheek. "Good boy," Alex whispered. His hand weakly stroked Ghost's fur. Ghost's golden eyes dimmed as his head lowered onto Alex's chest. His breathing slowed. "Stay with me," Alex murmured. A hand grabbed his shoulder. Vexor knelt beside him, his eyes sharp with concern. "Medical team is on the way," Vexor said. Alex's eyelids fluttered. We did it." Vexor's lips curled into a rare smile. "Yes, human, you did." Alex's head lolled back. Ghost's warmth against his side was the last thing he felt as darkness pulled him under. Alex woke to the steady hum of medical equipment. His body felt heavy, the ache deep in his bones, a constant reminder of the battle. His eyes fluttered open, and bright white lights above him made him wince. The soft beeping of a heart monitor filled the quiet room. "You're awake," a voice said. Alex turned his head. Vexor stood at the foot of the medical bed, his tall frame casting a shadow over the sterile room. His dark eyes studied Alex with an unreadable expression. Alex's throat was dry. "Ghost?" Vexor's gaze softened. "Alive. Barely." Alex's chest tightened. He forced himself to sit up, groaning as the pain flared through his side. He pulled aside the sheet, glancing down at the bandages wrapped tightly around his torso. "I need to see him," Alex said, his voice rough. Vexor's gaze hardened. "You're not in any condition." "I don't care." Vexor's eyes narrowed. For a moment, Alex thought he was going to refuse, but after a long pause, Vexor sighed and stepped aside. "Follow me." Alex swung his legs over the side of the bed. His body screamed in protest, but he pushed through the pain. He stood, gripping the wall for balance. Vexor watched him with quiet amusement as Alex stubbornly took a step forward. It took longer than Alex wanted, but eventually they reached the medical bay's secondary chamber. The lights were dimmer here, and the steady hum of life support machines filled the air. Ghost lay on a padded medical platform, his large body covered in healing patches. His white fur was stained and burned in places, but his chest rose and fell in a steady rhythm. A tube ran along his side, pulsing with faint blue light. Alex's breath hitched. He stepped toward Ghost, his hand trembling as he reached out and touched Ghost's fur. Ghost's eyes opened slowly. His golden gaze met Alex's. His tail gave a weak thump. "Hey, buddy," Alex whispered. Ghost's ears flicked, and his head shifted slightly toward Alex's hand. Alex knelt beside him, his fingers running gently through Ghost's fur. "You scared me," Alex said. "Thought you were gone." Ghost let out a low, rumbling sound, his nose nudging Alex's arm. Despite the pain, Alex smiled. Vexor's gaze remained fixed on them. He stepped forward, his expression oddly guarded. "He saved you, you know." "I know," Alex said quietly. Vexor's lips pressed into a thin line. "He fought with impossible strength. We've never seen anything like it." Alex's smile faded. "That's because you don't understand him. He's not just a pet." Vexor's eyes narrowed. "No, he's more than that. And so are you." Alex's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" Vexor hesitated. His gaze shifted toward Ghost. The energy burst he released during the fight. It wasn't natural. Our scientists are still analyzing the data, but it seems Ghost tapped into something. Something old. Something dangerous. Alex's hand tightened on Ghost's fur. "He saved us. That's all that matters." Vexor's gaze sharpened. "Perhaps, but the Council sees things differently." Alex's eyes narrowed. "The Council? What does the Council have to do with this?" Vexor's shoulders tensed. "They're worried. About you. About Ghost." "Why?" "Because you're human." Vexor's gaze darkened. "And because you survived something that should have killed you. Ghosts bond with you. It's unnatural. It defies everything we understand about interspecies connections." Alex stood slowly. His body protested, but his eyes remained hard. "So what happens now?" "The Council is deciding whether to classify Ghost as a weapon." Alex's jaw clenched. "He's not a weapon." "Tell them that," Vexor said coldly. The doors to the medical bay slid open. A tall alien figure stepped through, wearing the flowing black robes of the Galactic Council. Its greenish-blue skin shimmered under the lights, and its dark, featureless eyes locked onto Alex with chilling calm. "Human," the counselor said. "The Council has reached a decision." Alex's muscles coiled. Ghost growled softly, his ears flattening against his skull. "The creature known as Ghost will be classified as a Class 1 anomaly," the counselor said. "It will be taken into containment for further study." Alex's fists tightened at his sides. "Over my dead body." The counselor's gaze sharpened. "That is not a request." Ghost's growl deepened, his body trembling as he tried to stand. Alex knelt beside him, resting a hand on his back. "You're not taking him," Alex said quietly. "Then you leave us no choice." The counselor raised a hand. Armed guards stepped into the room, their weapons raised. Ghost tensed beneath Alex's hand. His fur bristled, and his golden eyes burned. "Stand down," Vexor's voice cut through the tension. The guards hesitated. The counselor's gaze flicked toward Vexor. "This does not concern you, Commander." "It does now," Vexor said, stepping in front of Alex and Ghost. His dark eyes glinted dangerously. "The human and his companions saved this station. They saved all of us." "The Council has spoken," the counselor said coldly. Vexor's hand hovered near his sidearm. "And I'm speaking now. You want to take them, you'll have to go through me." The guards shifted uneasily. "Commander," the counselor warned. Vexor's lips curled into a dangerous smile. "Try me." For a long, tense moment, no one moved. The hum of the life support machines filled the silence. Then the counselor lowered his hand. "This isn't over," it said. It turned and swept from the room. The guards followed, their footsteps echoing down the hall. Alex's breath shuddered. He leaned back against Ghost's side, his body weak. "Why?" Alex asked, his voice low. Vexor turned toward him. His expression softened. "Because you earned it." Ghost's tail thumped softly against the platform. Alex smiled weakly. "Rest now," Vexor said. "You'll need your strength." "For what?" Alex asked. Vexor's dark eyes glinted. "Because the Council is afraid. And when the Council is afraid, war isn't far behind." Alex's hand slid through Ghost's fur. Ghost's golden eyes watched him closely. "Let them come," Alex whispered. "We'll be ready." Ghost let out a soft, deep growl. His golden eyes gleamed brightly in the dim light.